Welcome. My name is Alexandra Shimina, and we're doing Ancestral Conversations, continuing from last year when we had a whole series, and they're all available on my channel. Today, we are having a wonderful interview with Susan Schlosser. And Susan has been a systemic constellations facilitator for the last 20 years with special draw and interest to nature constellations and actually doing them in nature. So she takes people to sacred sites in the US and they do the work there outside. And in one of those occasions, in one of those sacred sites, the ancient ones came forward in the middle of the work, and this was the beginning of her journey with the ancestors and the relationship with them. And I'm sure that we'll hear much more about it in this time together. Welcome, Susan. It's exciting to have you here, and it's exciting to continue this series for me as well.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for what you're doing. I really appreciate what you're offering to us. I've listened to many of the interviews and I find them very interesting and inspiring and feels good. So thank you.
Thank you. That feels good for me, and I'm super excited that they are being watched and that people get something out of it. This is the dream, you know. This is the dream of this project, and this is the whole point of doing this, to take ancestors out there and into the mainstream. So, talking about ancestors, my first question for you would be, what are ancestors? What do you mean by that when you say ancestors?
Thank you. Well, having grown up in a culture that did not really address ancestors, it's been a tremendous opening in my life to discover more about that. And I give a great big thanks to Constellation Work for that. So ancestors for me, as I've gone down that path, are the bloodline, right? My parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, the ones that have come before me and whose DNA I carry, my eye color and my health possibilities or not, that kind of thing, my bones. Those are my blood ancestors, and to whom I'm very grateful for. So there's that level of ancestors for me. And what also feels true is that I'm walking on land of ancestors of different, they're not in my blood because I didn't come from the land I actually live on now. And there are ancestors of this land that so I'm very aware of that and give thanks to that and honor that. And I'm also aware when I'm interacting, like when you and I are interacting, our ancestors are with us. So our streams of where we came into life come together. So when I work with people, whether it's one-on-one or in a group, I'm aware of there's like many rivers coming together that are all the lines from where we came and the places we came from. So this is a tremendous coming together of beings. And when I really feel into it, we're not that far apart from each other. When we call on our ancestors and we think about together that where we really came from. Where did we really start? Like we all came from somewhere together. Like when I was in South Africa walking on that soil, I was like, oh my gosh, my original ancestors probably walked on that soil. And as I walked, I thought of that. So ancestors are like where we have all come from, all of us, in our blood, in our bones, in our DNA. And then in the ways we come together from where my ancestors came, and yours and all of ours that are listening here right now, we're all coming together and our ancestors are with us.
Thank you, Susan. That really speaks to how I see ancestors as well. Not only the bloodline, but the wider field, the ancestors of the land, the ancient ancestors of the ancestors, and the universal ancestors of the earth. What I realized when you mentioned land, when you that I don't know where you are in the world. And I thought, oops. And I thought that I missed that in the introduction. And it's interesting because I think that's very much part of what you're doing and the way you're working, because you're so much in contact with the land. So maybe my next question would be if you could introduce a little bit of the land that you're on and that you work with.
Well, I live right now in Oregon in the United States, in the southwestern part of the state, which is the land of the Tequila people. And I come from Wisconsin originally, which is the land of the Menominee people. And my ancestors come from Ireland and Scotland and England and Germany, and then on further back. So I'm aware of all those streams coming together. And and so also aware of the indigenous people of this land. I want to honor them because they were the original people. So wherever I go, on whatever lands I go on, and we do the groups together, or even if I'm traveling just by myself, I thank the ancestors of that land, and I thank the land. And yes, because I've actually done those nature constellations in the United States, in Canada, in Germany, in South Africa. I have had the honor of working outdoors in all of those places. And so, and in different places in the States. So that is different land. And when I go and work on the land like that, I don't assume I can just go like it's, oh, I want to go work there, so I'm going to do that. It's actually a permission. Like when I first went to Chaco in northwestern New Mexico, which is an ancient ceremonial site, it called me. I was like, well, I've never been there. And it's like, no, come and do constellation work. Well, I've never, what right do I have? Is it okay? And I just kept feeling this call and kept feeling this call. And so I finally went. And it was an amazing experience. And that's when this whole thing opened up around the ancient ones, and began having this teaching from that our ancestors are, yes, the beings, the people that we come from, but it's also the land we come from. And that is our earth, right? And like I was just talking about, wherever we are. And so they call themselves the ancient ones. And I find that as a way, just because it was all new, it was new to me. I honor indigenous cultures. It's really in my heart's intention not to do anything disrespectful and try and take someone else's culture and call it mine. That's really important to me. So this was something that was just coming to me as a white person and a group of us. And we did have some indigenous people with us as well. And it's been a tremendous teaching that is deep in me. And I feel a kind of responsibility, if you will, to honor that. Like what the ancient ones were talking about when they came forth in the constellation work is, we are not being honored. Like there's a living, the rocks are living, the trees are living, the air is alive. Our ancestors breathed the same air we're breathing, right? They were in the same waters that we were in, and the way of connecting there, and walked on the earth. We're walking on the bones, if you will, of our ancestors, and in the footprints of them. And so in these ways of there's so many ways of connecting there, and that was a tremendous opening for me and all of us in the group. And what they said to us is, people aren't calling on us, and we need to be utilized. We have wisdom that we carry. And when you don't call on us, it's like we're asleep. It's like we're just not being utilized. Just like for our ancestors, like we can call on them and they will help us. So will the ancient ones of the land. Like when I'm out in nature and working with people, we might be at the redwood trees, which are the tallest trees on the planet, right? And some of them are 2,000 years old. And we go to these trees, so I can feel that in my heart, and we honor them and listen, right? It's not just, oh, you know, what can you give me, tree? What can you give me, rock? What can I do for you? How can I open myself, open my ears and open my eyes and open my heart so that I may receive from you? You are the ancient ones, right? You have been here so much longer than I have. I'm a little one. I know nothing. I'm a baby here, and they're a wobbler, maybe. People call it toddlers wobblers. I'm very little here, and the respect is so crucial. I feel the respect for our ancestors, and the acknowledging of, I have no idea what you went through. I have no idea. And thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you've been through. And I'm so grateful to have this life and that I can be here now and honor you and respect you and call upon you and thank you for helping me in any way you can. And that's the same kind of thing we can do with the ancient ones. Just honor them, call on them. And as we call on them, and this was coming out of rock, so I know that might be a stretch for some people, but but of course it's spread to everything, you know, all of nature. But honor us, call on us. We'll be there. We'll help you. And it's such a gift, Alexandra, because it's like we are held by so much more than I ever realized, and that I think most of us realize. And that to me is a tremendous gift and a tremendous blessing, and one that has really come to me through constellation work. It's deepened in me so much. So I just have a deep bow of gratitude for that, because it changed my life in huge ways to open to this. And like when I work one-on-one with people, well, this could be in a group too, but I would say, just because I've been in private practice for about almost 27 years. And when people come, I would say the most consistent pain and the deepest pain is, I'm alone. I don't know if I belong. I don't feel like I belong. And to be able to realize we're part of a much larger web of life, and that in that web we are all connected, and it's huge to really be able to feel that and open that into that and receive from that. I'm yakking away.
No, you are actually already answering the question that I had in my head as you were inviting the ancestors, and I really appreciated and responded to the invocation that you did. And I noticed as you were doing that, I had a little fly who came and sat right at the bottom of the screen, as if it was just watching you doing it, and it was just sitting there until you moved to the next topic, and then it left. And I was like, oh. So there was a witness as well from the nature world to the invocation. But you started to answer the question that I had around how exactly can they help, as you've mentioned that, you know, if they said call on us so that we can help, and what is this help? So for somebody who've never heard of this concept or know anything about it, how can ancestors help, either our blood ancestors or the ancient ones and the ancestors of the land? And you've started answering with the loneliness and the belonging, and maybe you could expand a bit more on that.
Mhm. Thank you. I love that the fly, one of our representatives came as a fly. Hi. um, so when I can even speak for myself, because that was also one of my greater pains of feeling alone and disconnected. Um, when I or any of us are in that place, we're really shut down. We don't have access to resources, don't have access to much love, don't have access to much peace, and much of a kind of settling inside of our own self. And that's painful. It's like walking around, and when we're operating on just like one cylinder or something, just a fraction of what we're capable of. And it's really deep in me, like, what are we really capable of? Like, what can we do? And I feel the need for that so much right now on our planet with what's going on. Like, may we all show up with our gifts, right? So coming back to that place that where we can feel, and I myself too have felt alone like that, as I open myself and feel ancestors and the ancient ones, my whole being relaxes. And when I can feel part of that greater web of life, it actually it melts my heart. It kind of opens my mind. It relaxes my being, and it's like, oh, there's so much more here, right? There's so much more. And that can help open into even magic, more like possibilities, and that there's spirits in nature, little beings in the flowers, and or energies in the flowers, and all aspects of life, and teachings. And so it's like, wow, opening up to that and being that little one, opening to the wonder, right? I'm a little one here. What is this? And connecting with that more like childlike spirit in a way, right? To like, wow, look at how the trees moving and the clouds, and it's, and just like we have the possibility of, when we deepen into that, of actually relaxing in our being. And when we can relax in our being, then so much more love can come through. There's more peace. There's more feeling of, oh, I don't want to judge you. I have no idea what you've been through. I have no idea what your ancestors have been through. Bless you. Thank you for being here at this time with us. Touches my heart.
Thank you, Susan. I can really see how you're touched, and this is touching me as well. And I loved that what you said about being the little ones, and being just completely wondrous about the world, and the magic of the world. And at the same time, what was coming up for me was the question that I hear a lot in my practice with people is, and I think this is one of the first questions that people ask when they meet this work, is what love and joy you're talking about. All I know behind me has been, trouble, pain, suffering, death, illness, or even nothing at all, for people who don't know where they come from, adoption, or some life situation where there is no information about what happens before. But most commonly people just say, well, it's been so bad for everyone before me, why would I even want to look there? What do you what do you say to people in these situations to get to that place that you've just described of complete openness and belonging?
It's a very good question. First of all, I approach that with a tremendous amount of respect, because we are where we are, right? And I really understand that. I've had my own ways of, like, I'm not like constantly in love and joy and wonder either, right? I have my own challenges. And when people come to me with that, and I can even relate some from my own personal life. To answer your question, when people come to me with that, I respect where they are. That is really, that is where they are. And I don't ever try to push something on them. And while they're here in that place, I also know and connect in my own being, or in a kind of prayer with their ancestors, and give thanks, because I know they've been through tremendous suffering and agony. And at the same time, I know that there's ancestors in that line that have tremendous strength and gifts and a kind of medicine, if you will, some real important perspectives and things they've gained from what they've been through. And so I understand that place. It's like, well, forget them, right? They abuse me, and I want nothing to do with them. And so it's a very gentle exploration. Like I said, I wouldn't maybe necessarily, and it depends on the person, and it depends on the moment, and it depends on if I feel any opening. And when there might be some opening, and I'm not going to push that, I would say, well, can you imagine that there might be some of your ancestors that actually weren't involved in that way, and actually did have some really important strength that they got, and found a way to open their hearts and live in love in the best way that they knew, and that they actually could be of benefit, that something happened down that line that created that kind of suffering. And we don't have to carry that. We don't have to carry that. That's theirs. And we can bless them and thank them for what they've been through, and know that it's in a much larger context, that there's been some horrific suffering in the world. And I'm sorry that you're suffering. This is kind of tricky, because I know how I'd say it in the moment. And also know that it's not something that you actually have to carry. You have a possibility of living your life more fully. And that's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. And so it's something I would do with care. It's something I would do gently, and then sometimes I'll search, like, if they had maybe a different kind of connection with a grandmother or a grandfather, and then maybe we can call on them. And can you imagine your grandfather or grandmother standing here with you? And then, that can open up something. So I'll just see if there's something like that might help. And then when people have been adopted, they also come from ancestors, right? They have their own ancestors, and the land they came from, and a whole lot that they bring forth from their ancestors. So it's been an honor and a pleasure to do constellation work and help those people know, oh my gosh, I have ancestors. I didn't even think about it, right? Or I didn't think much about it. And it's beautiful in a constellation when that can show up, and they can actually feel that they came from a line of people, and that's in them, and that as well, that there's gifts in there and challenges. you know, we all come from challenges and some sufferings and some traumas and there's also gifts as well. So it's a really important question, and I find it a very delicate exploration. Um, and it also really important because if it does feel like it's just me, that's so oh separating and so painful and um yeah, we long so much for that connection and to know we're not alone and oh, I don't have to carry it. It's amazing, right? And I can literally walk myself towards not carrying it and then open a little bit more even to love or a little bit more to not judging. And I think constellation work's amazing for that because when we work together in a group and someone might have judgments about somebody, but then they see where they came from or what's gone on in their system, we open our hearts, right? And that's a beautiful thing, and open our minds. And yeah, I wish we all could have more open hearts and open minds and find a way to have that in this life and bring that to life.
Thank you. That somehow asked me for a deep breath and just acknowledging that it's beautiful. And I really love how you talk about it. You bring a lot of kindness and grace into it, and it also feels very safe. You know, that thing that you mentioned about I will never push anyone into anywhere. It feels very safe somehow that you are exactly where you are and will move from there or not move. It's kind of, it depends on what the journey holds. I'm trying in my head to think which direction I would like to take this next, because I have several questions and I'm thinking which one would be a good question. You mentioned for example, asking people to imagine their grandmother or their grandfather as a first step. And one of my questions on the list is a little bit about that. What would be a first step for somebody? So, for example, somebody is open to this work, curious about it, but no idea where to begin. Is there a way to begin without jumping straight into a constellation workshop or doing a healing session, but sort of more connecting with it on your own?
Yes, and I think that's a good question and an important one. Because I'm thinking even if someone couldn't connect with a grandmother or grandfather, maybe there's an aunt or an uncle or and for some that are really disconnected from people because of so much trauma, then I'll go to the earth and well, what about a tree or a mountain or something like that? And so what I would do in that kind of situation, and I've also do this in real life as well, individually and with groups, is just imagine somebody that you feel safe with. You were talking about feeling safe, and that's so important. It's really important to me that people feel safe. It's like a flower. We aren't going to open the petals of the flower, right? The flower will open when it's given the right nutrients. So just can you imagine being here? Let's say it's an aunt. I felt my aunt. That's one person I could, because those are our ancestors too, right? We're connected to them as well. And just imagine being there with your aunt. And what happens when she is there with you? And what happens in your body? It's really important to pay attention to our body, because that's where, we can tighten and not be breathing, or we can relax and open. So I'm really conscious of that. And like, what happens in you? What happens in your body when you imagine that aunt there? And or whoever the being would be, right? Whoever that person would be, or a tree, or and what happens if they stand behind you? How does that feel? How does it feel if they stand at your side? And which side would feel better to have her on? And just noticing in the body what happens that way. When yeah, so that I feel is a good way to at least start, put our toe in the water and see what can happen. If I was working like individually, right, like someone's here, I ask them to see if they can imagine. Now, I'm going to assume in this situation they can imagine their parents and grandparents and things. Imagine your parents standing behind you, your dad on the right side, your mom on the left. And then imagine your grandparents standing behind them, and then your great grandparents, and just notice what that feels like. They don't have to actually, we can do that in a constellation, right? But as just one-on-one, if I imagine that, and people, when we imagine that, it's like, now that we can still hold ourselves, right, kind of tight and like not really relax into that. So then I said, now imagine just leaning back, like maybe a half an inch, maybe an inch. Just lean back and imagine them holding you. You can lean back into them. And what happens? What happens in your body? What happens in your being when you lean back into those that came before you? And I notice you're taking a deep breath. It's like, exactly right. So that's something we can call on every day. Or when we feel like we're in a tight situation or something, just like, or feeling alone or troubled in the world or whatever, it's like, oh, wait, you've been through so much more than I've ever been through. And please help me. And show me the way, or help, please give me some strength or resources or whatever gifts you can give me to help me with my perspectives here, and to open my heart here, or open my mind here. And because I know you've been through so much more than I have. And when you think of the conglomerate of all the beings, right, it's like, yeah, it's huge. And then, of course, if we're in a group, we can actually set that up and have representatives stand there and lean back and get that feeling. But we can do that even without people. And if I'm doing it one-on-one, and I'm actually setting up a constellation with objects, then I can also show them. And it's mind-blowing, right? When you think about it, especially because it can just set up like so many. Yeah. So, yeah.
Thank you for this image and for this suggestion. Absolutely. I felt it, you know, as you were doing it. I was kind of having all of them behind me and just leaning in, and it's just such a relief for the body to be held. I do this as a meditation in my workshops before the constellations, and in the last couple of months, maybe a bit more, what started happening is somebody would show up way beyond, before, you know, sort of one of the older ones, old ones, and they are showing up as somebody who dreamt you up. So somebody who was dreaming about the future and the future generations, and they are the ones for whom you were a dream. So somebody who dreamt you into existence. And the first time it arrived in the meditation, I felt so touched, literally looking into the eyes of that ancestor and just saying, thank you for dreaming me up. You know, it's just being somebody's dream is such a mind-blowing concept for me. It was so beautiful.
That is beautiful. What a gift that is.
Mm.
And what a teaching, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that also brings me every time to thinking about us being the ancestors one day, you know, us looking back, but also somebody else in the future looking back at us and going, thank you for dreaming me up. And I keep thinking about, am I dreaming anyone up?
That's great. I love it. I know, really.
and oftentimes I'm thinking, I don't think I am, you know. So it's this, what they call in the shamanic practice, dreaming a good dream. Where would we like to end up, or the world to end up? And I wanted to ask you, you've mentioned in the beginning, call on your aunt, or on a tree, or on a rock, and that reminded me of the ceremony that we were part of in South Africa, in the intensive there. And when they were doing the potla, the calling in of the ancestors ceremony, and how it struck me that they would call in the ancestors, including naming all the different beings, like the frogs and the rhino and the stars. And that, for me, that was expanding my understanding of the ancestors. And I was wondering whether that was also why you mentioned a tree and a rock.
Yes, it is. And because it's part of that larger system, again, part of our, I don't even like the word system there, even though it's a larger community, right? And I was an author in a book, invited to be an author in this, Returning to Membership in Earth Community. And that's what it feels like. It's like we're a community on Earth, right? The frogs are part of it. The birds are part of it. We have spring here. The blossoms are part of it. All of it. And when I'm doing constellations out in nature, nature's constantly working with, it's constantly with us. Even if I'm in the room here, I notice, right? Or like, even if we've been in a room together, like I've worked out at the coast, in the Oregon coast, and we are in a house because it can be really stormy and things. And a bald eagle came and just right at the window, and it's like, whoa, right in someone's constellation. I mean, it's just like, like my cat wanting to come in here. It's just like nature is so alive, and it's communicating with us if we'll listen. Like we've been out on just outdoors somewhere. I think of this one time on the beach in particular, and we were doing this constellation for someone. There was a lot of, their mind was really, and these birds went over, it's just like the mind. So yes, that all the beings that live in all the different ways on the earth and in the water and in the air, and I even invite people to see if they can come to more peace with the ones that they don't like, right? Maybe they're afraid of sharks, or we have ticks here, or mosquitoes, whatever it is, that is too part of the earth community, and that it's important to see if we can open ourselves to all of life. Yeah. And it was so special to be on those African soils and be amongst the ones that you just named. The frogs are amazing. And, being around rhinos and elephant. The first time I saw an elephant in the wild, I just burst into tears. It was like the most amazing gift, just so that they're in their free roaming land. It's like, oh, anyway, I could go on about that, but that's a tremendous gift. So yes, we are part of a much larger community.
Thank you. I'm going to ask potentially, what's the right word? Triggering or provoking question.
Okay.
But again, something that comes up in my practice from people when they're trying to understand this work and to know more about it. And they would ask, but isn't it in some ways even dangerous or bad to kind of to look back and to work with ancestors, because essentially they're dead people. Are you calling the dead from their graves, and isn't it disturbing them somehow?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I respect that question as well, and because I no desire to disturb the dead. And so if it didn't feel right to someone because of their cultural beliefs or religious beliefs, spiritual beliefs, whatever that is, then I would want to honor that and let that be what's true for them. Um, and again, it would be a matter of just really feeling it out, really sensing it out, and being respectful. And that might be a place then with someone that they could connect more with nature, and maybe more with the living, right? If they can, if they're, can work with their parents or their grandparents and aunts, uncles, that kind of thing. So yeah, because if that's their belief, then that needs to be respected. And that's why I would just work in a different way. Yeah. What do you do?
That's a very good question. Well, to me, the ancestors are essentially well-wishing beings, and if there is a sense of disturbance, or something is not right, I usually invite the person themselves to look at what doesn't feel right, because to me that could be an entanglement happening with
Yeah.
that ancestor. So something that is being interpreted as the ancestor is feeling disturbed or troubled or doesn't like us doing this work, it's more something else within the person coming out and being triggered with respect to the field and to the ancestors. So my first port of call would be to look at what exactly does the person hold about about that particular ancestor. For example, maybe there is some special connection, and generally, yes, explore the beliefs about death and what does it mean to be dead and what does it mean to be alive. It's a whole big subject, isn't it, when you touch that and begin to explore the understanding of it.
It's huge. And I didn't say that part, but that would be something else for me, is really explore that, because not to push against someone's beliefs, right? But just to see if there can be some opening in it. Yes, what is that? And because I think a possible entanglement there is really true. Because I actually do believe in my being, the depths of my being, that the ancestors want to support us. I really feel that very deeply now. And they don't want us to carry their pain. And if there is some disturbance, it just wants to be seen and acknowledged and honored for what it is. And so that is really important, is just to see what's possible there, as I do believe our ancestors, they're not in body anymore. They're not carrying the same stuff that we carry here as we try to navigate life and what life brings us. So it's a very different, it's just different, right? It's because sometimes people get stuck in, well, in life they were like this, and so I'm not calling on them because they were abusive or something. And it's like, but that's over now. And what else can happen? What can we open to here? So for some reason, I'm having this image when my mother was passing away. One of my sisters and I were at her bedside, and she was in the hospital, and I had been holding her hand, and it was in the middle of the night. And so my sister took over, and I went and laid on the little day bed right there. And I'm not a person to have these kinds of visions or anything. And when I laid down on that cot and I began to just close my eyes and relax, all of a sudden I saw my father, my grandmother, her mother, and one of my mother's sisters so close that I feel like I could have touched them. And I said to my sister, Kate, she goes, I see it too, without me saying a thing. So they were right there for her as she was very close and she was making that transition. And that was an amazing experience for me. Yeah. So they weren't disturbed. But again, I respect if someone feels that, but that was an amazing experience to have that.
Yeah, it's so touching. And again, you've just answered my next question. I think there is a bit of mind reading going on there, because you're just tuning in. And when you said, I don't know why I have this image in my head, I'm like, I'm pretty sure because this is my question in my head.
That's funny.
But the question was about an example of a personal experience of interaction with ancestors, and how this work might have changed something for you, transformed somehow your life or the work that you do. So that was a beautiful example. If you want to give me another story, that would be lovely as well.
Well, what comes when you ask that one is being in constellation work as a representative, which I love being a representative. It's such a huge teacher of compassion, and getting out of the way and trusting myself and trusting the body, and also as a facilitator to watch what happens when someone feels that connection and can relax and let go and have a different perspective. That's such a huge gift. It's a huge gift. Is that we're just have, there's so much longing and so many that feel disconnected and not part of that belonging that is really here for us. It's one time I was really, really struggling and with an inner critic kind of thing that the mind can do. And I was really like on my knees and I was like, what is this all about? Why is it like this? Why? And the answer that came, and I remember the moment because it was right as the sun was coming up, the voice said, because you have to care enough about yourself to do something different. So may we all care enough about ourselves to do something different.
May we all care enough about ourselves to do something different.
Mm-hmm. To treat ourselves differently.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads beautifully, I think, to my next question, which is around these times that we find ourselves in, and if there is anything that you could say about now, in about the last year maybe, and what came out for you in the last year, also in the context of the ancestral work, but sort of also in the context of that you have to care about yourself to do something different, because I think that's exactly what we are all asked for in the last year especially.
Thank you for that. when the virus first started happening, it was last March, I did a constellation about it on Zoom. And what the virus told us is that I have one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to make you stop. And if you don't stop, I'll be back. And so there was something really profound in that stopping. Very challenging for people feeling so isolated, and it's been incredibly challenging. I haven't been able to see my family, and that kind of thing. It's painful, and yet there's something really profound about that message, because like working with the land and working with nature, it is on nature's time. We need to go slower. We go so fast, and in that stopping, in that slowing down, we have the possibility of going into a deeper place inside of ourselves, and hopefully caring, right? Having enough care for ourselves, and also potentially receiving more from nature, and from the wisdom that's available to us here. So that's something that has been really with me in a strong way. And where I live, well, we all are, but impacted by the climate disruption. We had big fires here last year, and 42,000 people lost their homes or businesses, and we're in severe drought for this year. So it's like, that's really here. It's in our face here. We have a collective trauma because of the fires. And so what do we do? People say, what can I do? What can I do? And I think one of the most important things we can do is to work with ourselves, and however we can, to help open our hearts and bring more love to the world, and do what we can to connect more with each other and have that more open heart, and also honor nature, honor this beautiful gift we've been given. It breaks my heart sometimes that to see what's happening in the level of disregard and disrespect for our Mother Earth. It's just heartbreaking to me. And so to do what the ancient ones have said, call on us. Can I stop what's happening? No. But I think the more that we can open ourselves and honor each other, and honor the gift of life, and honor the gift of nature, of this beautiful planet, and open our eyes to it, be in interaction with it. It's alive. Receive, not just what I can call on to manifest, right? It's what wants to come through at this time is the question. What can we do? So it's a living question for me.
Do you think it will be okay if I share the little exercise that you did with us in the Australasian intensive, in the workshop with the ancient ones, when it was in the forest? Because that's what really inspired me, and that's why I wanted to reach out to you and to do this. And I think it fits really nicely with what you've just said, and somehow the image came to my head as to what can I do and how to explore that. And what you've asked us to do is to be in force, so to have representatives, ourselves, and 3 representatives. And 1 representative was the ancient ones, 1 representative would be the ancestors, our ancestors, and then the 3rd representative would be an issue or a question. And in this context, that could be a question about what is my place in all of this, what is my role, what can I do in this situation, and then to just allow the representatives to give feedback and to settle into the experience of what do the ancient ones see in that question, and what do they have to say, what do the ancestors have to say. That was a beautiful exploration that we did, and it was very fast but very efficient. It was really lovely, and to represent the ancient ones was so good. It was just such an incredible experience of being that, I don't know, it was a beautiful ancient energy and huge. Yeah, it was just such a gift. Thank you for that experience. So we are about to close, to wrap this up, and I was just wondering if there is anything else you would like to say before we close.
What comes is this little poem that I've known for years, and it's written by that person called Anonymous. It's written many poems and things. And it says, you can tell it's ancient, old anyway. All things by almighty power, near and far, hiddenly to each other, connected are, that thou canst pick a flower without the trembling of a star. We matter, and what we do with our life matters. So may all beings know how deeply connected we are with each other and with the planet.
This is so beautiful. I will ask you to write this to me so that I can add it to the video at the bottom, so that people can read it. It's just, oh, I love it.
Thank you. Me too. I found that 30 something years ago. Yeah. It's like, whoa. Yeah. Yeah. In my group, so I say, will you say that poem again? I would be happy to write it for you. And please share that constellation. I'm so grateful that you had such a good experience with it. And because it really feels like a kind of a personal responsibility I feel for with the ancient ones. And so when I drive or travel, when I'm just calling them, please come, be with us, come be with us.
Come be with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Susan, thank you so much for your time and for this gift and for your wisdom and for bringing, and also for being so completely wholehearted and open-hearted. I can see how this material touches you and how it's really you. It's beautiful to see. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to be here with you. I just feel like we're right here together, even though we're across an ocean from each other. And I'm so grateful for who you are and what you bring. And you ask really good questions and really important questions. So thank you. And I wish you very well.